Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I'm gonna try and be churning out the videos as fast as I can this month. I found a couple more books that I thought would be much better for Hauntober, for the actual week of Halloween. If I can't, then I might just cut out a few of the books we were planning to do beforehand and save those for next year. But if it seems like I'm putting out content like crazy, that will be why. This month and next month are going to be kind of crazy because I'm going to be doing try to do an entire series in preparation for the launch of a new book in that series. So that being said, let's move on with today's video, and we are going to be doing Heaven and Earth, which is the second installment in the Three Sisters Trilogy from Nora Roberts. So a quick recap for book one. We had a character named Nell Channing came to the island fleeing an abusive husband. She found out she was a witch. So was a woman named Mia and another woman named Ripley. All of the three women are descendants of the original witches who created the island of Three Sisters to escape the persecution of the Salem witch trials. And each of them had tragic fates ending in death, and now their descendants have to come back, face the same thing with a better outcome, or else the island will be lost. So we start off, all three of the books start off in the past in some capacity, the point in the past that will affect each character's story. So the opening takes place in September of 1699, which is a few years after they created the island. Sisters Earth, Fire are mourning the loss of their sister Air, who was killed by her husband. Earth is set on getting revenge. She believes it is justice, but it is really revenge. Fire is also grieving, but she is trying to convince Earth not to seek revenge, telling her, you know, if you turn your back on the craft, you're going to be turning into the dark and you are going to lose your soul. You know, all of the things that you would expect to hear in this type of conversation. Earth does not change her mind. She moves forward with casting her spell. However, we find out later in the book that when she cast this spell, the price was something far more than she thought it would be. And rather than her life, it was the life of her husband that became forfeit, which then shattered her soul, again causing her death. So this really kind of puts out what the struggle that Ripley is going to be facing is. We already know from the previous story she's uncomfortable with the craft. She's uncomfortable with her power. She seems to really dislike using it. You're not entirely sure why, but there is hints that there was something that had occurred, which of course will come up in this story, but I'm not going to tell you what it was because that would defeat the point of you wanting to read the story. So jumping back to modern day, it is now January of 2002, which is about a year and a month or so, a year and a couple months after the end of the previous story. Zach and Nell have gotten married and they are now back from their honeymoon. Being that Zach and Ripley had lived in the same home, their childhood home in fact, having the newlyweds home, she's starting to think it might be time for me to think about getting my own place, give the lovebirds some time and space and privacy, because newlyweds, we all know what that means. So again, she's wanting to give privacy to her brother and sister-in-law. And then she has the wonderful idea that, hey, Mia is now vacant a tenant for the Yellow Cottage. I'm going to ask her if I can rent the Yellow Cottage and try and pass it off as doing Mia a favor, which Mia knows that Ripley wouldn't do her a favor at this point, so that's kind of silly, but she is a bit perturbed to find out that Mia has in fact already rented the Yellow Cottage out to a man named Dr. MacAllister Book, and she's even less thrilled to learn that he is in fact a paranormal researcher, given the fact that she is uncomfortable with her power and craft. She's not very happy about this, And I'm sure somewhere in the back of her mind she thinks that Mia did it just to spite her and make her uncomfortable. So not long after arriving on the island, MacAllister Book, also known as Mac, wins a bet against Ripley, and as a result she ends up having to spend some time with him for his research. She's extremely uncomfortable. He kind of ends up letting her off the hook, so to speak. He still wants her time, but they just talk about other things not related to what he's there to research. And they realize they have something of a mutual attraction, and he's a bit surprised by it. And she is not just surprised by it, but she's a little bit annoyed and aggravated by it because, again, what he is there to research and look into, and she doesn't like it. So, but there's another man that is also coming to the island. He is a journalist by the name of Jonathan Q. Harding. He is wanting to get an in-depth story about Helen Remington, also known as Nell Channing, and her now ex-husband Evan Remington, who is of course the man who abused her, causing her to flee the marriage. And you know, he is technically there to try and get a story. He is a journalist, that's what he does, but it doesn't take long to realize that he's actually being influenced by some sort of a dark entity that seems to be trying to take down the three sisters, the descendants of the original witches. So someone or something is channeling him to do harm to the three women. So considering the change of events, once it becomes known that this man is here and that darkness is somehow channeling him, Ripley realizes she has to go back to using her powers. She has to embrace her powers. She has to find a way to control them and get past her fear and her anger and anxiety about it. So she also has to deal with her anger issues and her constant thirst for wanting justice, as she calls it, really just revenge over what happened with Nell and everybody. So that's really the gist of the story. So let's get into the characters a little bit. Ripley, as previously stated, Ripley has to learn to handle her power and her anger, but she also has to show enough humility to actually ask for help, which is very difficult for her. She's very prideful. She doesn't like to admit that she needs help with anything. She has to open herself up to a relationship with Mac, because very clearly their fates are intertwined. We find out that Mac is actually a descendant of one of the original sisters of the island. So that would explain why he's so into the paranormal, why he's been drawn here. He's a part of the story. They're not sure how, but he is. But she also has to open herself up to a relationship with Mia again. These two girls grew up as best friends. Something happened. They had to end their relationship. Mia never understood why until this story. And Ripley ended up having to turn her back on her best friend and this power and everything. And so it's a lot for her to really take in. This is something she's turned her back on. She has not been an active part of it. She's kind of brushed it off and sneered at it because of her distrust of herself. And now she has to embrace it all. She has to bring Mia back into her life. They have to try and make nice, which is kind of difficult because they've had years and years of animosity. So there is a lot of development there in that aspect. As for Mac, Mac, as we know, is a paranormal research, and again, as I stated, he is a long-lost descendant of one of the original three sisters. Namely, his character seems to be there to help theorize with Mia and Nell, but also he's instrumental in Ripley coming to terms with her powers, with herself, with her need and seeming inability to control herself. And essentially he is kind of like a stabilizing force for her, so to speak, and is able to help her, you know, with relearning how to do everything and learning how to control it and learning how to not like completely lose her crap every time something goes slightly wrong. So And then Mia and Ripley, again, as I previously stated, they have to reform their bond in some way. They were best friends, and then that had to end abruptly. And you also find out that it was at a time where Mia was extremely hurt after her, the love of her life, Sam Logan, had left her essentially on the island. So there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment between the two. It's going to take a long time for the two of them to band together and to heal. However, you know, the beginnings have started, and of course they're starting to lay groundwork for Mia's story, which of course is going to be the last story of the series. And I'm betting that it's going to get crazy. So, and as for Jonathan Harding and Evan Remington, yes, I included them in the characters here for analysis. There's not really too much to analyze with these two. Again, Jonathan Harding was going to seek a story on Nell Channing, and he ended up kind of becoming a power source for some sort of evil entity. The evil entity, though, seems to be channeling Evan Remington in a way as well and using him as some sort of a conduit. So the two together are pretty much utilized for stalking and targeting the three descendants of the witches, but also to show just how powerful this evil has become. At one point, Ripley uses astral projection to look in on Evan Remington at the mental institute where he has been since he was caught at the end of the last story. Because of the power of this dark entity, it was able to see Ripley in astral projection form, which he shouldn't be able to do as a human man, and physically use her astral projection to cause her physical body, still on Three Sisters Island, physical harm. Technically speaking, that's something that should never be able to happen, let alone by a mere human, which of course means he's no longer just human. He is somehow linked with the dark entity. And all I'm going to say pertaining to the third book is buckle up, Buttercup. We're in for a bumpy ride. So overall, I liked the story. I thought it was very good. Again, because they're interlocking stories and because we are dealing with supernatural things here. In some aspects, character development wasn't terribly great. It was better than the first one because we're not laying as much groundwork. They already have an existing groundwork from the first story. So I would say that this is like 3.3, 3.2 out of 5 stars, whereas the first book got a 3-point star. So it's a little bit higher on the rankings. It was definitely fun. It started bringing in a little bit more of the supernatural, a little bit more of the magical aspect of it with the astral projection and with the dark entity that is like starting to take over some people. So so I'm going to venture to say the third book probably is going to be the same. So, wow, I did that in under 10 minutes. Holy cannoli, I didn't think I could do it. So, I'm going to try and get the other review filmed tonight before I go to bed. I've been getting my notes together for that one, so I should be able to hopefully finish it up and get it done. And then I got to get caught up on reading for the rest of the book. So, haha! Busy, busy, busy. But, I hope you enjoyed the review. I hope it was helpful. I'm rambling a little bit here. I hope to see you at the next review. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.